Welcome to the office of Deputy Chief Angelo Daniele of Haledon, New Jersey. And we're here with Deputy Chief Haledon, and I've known him for many years, since I was at William Patterson University. Angelo, thank you for being our guest today.
Appreciate it.
And welcoming us into your office.
Thank you.
We started out at the flag, and I think that's a good spot for us, knowing your history. We're going to go back a little bit, and we're going to start this history with your family, your personal history.
How are you, Father?
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Chief and I, Deputy Chief and I, have known each other, I guess, through my years at William Patterson. You're here 20 years.
Yes.
So, all the years that I've served at William Patterson. And the theme today is going to be a little bit of history, a little bit of personal family history, and police history, and the significance of military/police work in Angelo's life. So let's get right into it. Go back as far as you can. And you were talking before about your grandfather came over?
Yes, my grandfather, who was actually an immigrant from Italy, he came over here in the early 1900s. He actually joined the Army at 18 years old. He actually fought in World War I.
Did he become a citizen then?
He did. He became a citizen.
And then joined?
Then joined the military. He was deployed to go to Germany in World War I, and he was also in World War II as well too, and went back to Germany. Later on, he had met my grandmother, and they had, obviously gotten married. This was probably, I want to say, like 1918, maybe 1920, around that time era. He was the first one basically to be in the military as far as our, family members.
Right.
After that, we had my uncle Angelo, who I'm actually named after. He was actually drafted here. Born and raised in Patterson. That's where my family originally came from Italy. They came here to Patterson, which is obviously Silk City. My uncle Angelo, who was actually born in 1920, April 1st, 1920, when he was 18 years old, due to the fact of the outcome of Pearl Harbor, he was actually drafted, and he was deployed to go to Guam to World War II, where the Japanese were taking over. Unfortunately, he was killed in action at the age of 24 years old.
You've known this history all your life?
I actually have, yeah.
It's fascinating because it's right at your fingertips,
Exactly.
the years as well.
He was 24 years old. He was actually killed in action on July 23rd, 1944. He's actually buried in Honolulu, Hawaii. He was killed in Guam. His body was shipped over to Honolulu, Hawaii, where he's buried at the Pacific Memorial Cemetery over there.
Have you been there?
I have not. My aunt has actually been there. I've done research on it. I actually, in memory of him, I actually got his information from his, from his name, the day he was born, the division that he was in, and actually did a memorial tattoo on Memorial Day weekend, actually, of last year. I did a memorial tattoo of his dog tags on my chest in memory of him.
I don't want to see them.
Yeah.
Not right now.
I was actually named after him. My grandmother was very close with him.
Oh, that's great.
And obviously, I'll get into it, but I'm actually a twin, and my brother Anthony, and I'm obviously Angelo, and I was named after my uncle, who was actually, in memory of him, who was killed in World War II.
That's great.
To go back into the whole military aspect, my twin brother and I, when we were 18 years old, we were actually destined to go into the Marine Corps, and he actually went. I stayed here because I actually got hired as a full-time dispatcher at that time. So,
in Haledon?
In Haledon.
And what year was that?
This was 1996.
Wow.
1996. So my brother ended up going in the Marines. I ended up staying here. At the time, Jerry Gamble, who was the retired chief.
Oh, I remember Jerry,
Yep,
yeah.
he ended up hiring me as a full-time dispatcher.
And he sat next to me when you were installed as Deputy Chief.
Yes.
Right. I hadn't seen him in so many
Yeah,
years.
Jerry Gamble for a long time. And he brought me on as a full-time dispatcher here. My brother ended up going in the Marine Corps. And he did 4 years active, and he was stationed in North Carolina. And he actually was, he did, I would say 2 Mediterranean floats, and he actually saw combat. At that time that he was in the Marines, there was a conflict going on in Albania. The Albanian Albanians, I should say, were taking over the American, what do you call it? They call it the house that's there.
Embassy?
Yeah, embassy. Thank
Oh,
you. They were actually
interesting.
they were trying to take over the U.S. embassy, which at the time he was on the Mediterranean float, and they got verted to go over there. So at that time he was over there for a short period of time, which actually made him at the veteran status, because if I'm correct, if you're in the military, you have to see X amount of combat, correct, in order to be an actual veteran. So by him actually getting deployed to go to Albania for a certain amount of time, he actually got the veteran status.
Oh, interesting.
If he didn't go to Albania, he would just obviously be in the military, and he wouldn't get that veteran status, because
Right.
you have to serve in some sort of a conflict or war
I see.
for a certain amount of time in order to get that veteran status.
I see.
It's actually just benefited him in a lot of ways,
Is he practicing now as a
Yeah, he's
officer?
he's a police officer. He actually stayed down there. He's been down there for 20 years. He did 4 years in the Marines. After he was done with the Marine Corps, he actually stayed down there, and he became a police officer in North Charleston, South Carolina, which he's currently a sergeant down there. A lot of there's a lot of military bases down there between Army, Marines,
Sure,
Navy.
sure.
So a lot of them, they get scooped up pretty quickly as far as, or absorbed by the police departments down there. And, he made a lifestyle out of it, and he really liked it.
Excellent.
So now,
And I met him at your installation as well, right?
no, that was my older brother,
Okay,
actually.
okay. Is he military, police?
He was a police officer also. My brother Joe, captain at the Passaic County Sheriff's
The whole
Department.
family.
Yeah. I'll get at that. Started my grandfather, my father. Then my nephew, he did 4 years in the Citadel down in South Carolina. He left the Citadel after 4 years, and he joined the Marine Corps as well too. He's recently out as a captain. He actually got deployed to go to Africa, and he got deployed to go to Afghanistan. He also obviously has veteran status as well too, and he is also on the same police department as my twin brother in North Charleston, South Carolina.
That's great.
Yep, he ended up staying down there as well too. So my older brother, like I said, he's a captain for the Passaic County Sheriff's Department. He recently just retired. He did 25 years of service. But it really all started with my grandfather
Yeah,
on
coming
my
over.
dad's side.
Wow.
Actually, my grandfather on my dad's side. My grandfather that came over from
Daniele.
Italy, that was from my mother's side.
Oh, okay, okay.
So it's so funny because on my mother's side, it was like a lot of all military. I had uncles that were in the Marine
Where are they
Corps.
from in Italy?
Some in Naples,
Okay,
and some of them in Calabria.
okay.
So it's so funny because my dad's side was all police, and then my mother's side was all military.
So you were destined.
I mean, I'm 40 years old, and the 40 years I feel like I've, between military and police, my household was pretty strict.
Were there artifacts in your household growing up?
Absolutely. I always joke around and turn around and say, I feel like I've been in like boot camp or in a police academy since the day I was born. I mean, on my father's side, it started with my grandfather, who was retired from the Passaic County Prosecutor's Office as a detective, and then my dad, who was a retired sergeant at the time of West Patterson, now it's Woodland Park, and then my older brother, who was a captain for the Sheriff's Department, my twin brother.
So that name is around.
Yeah. So, that's why it's basically like our family tradition. I also have a little brother. He's the only one who actually decided not to be a police officer.
Okay.
And he actually works for the government in Washington, D.C. as a scientist.
Oh, God bless you.
So he decided to go that route. So he's the only
Nice.
one really, I also have two cousins, first cousins that are police officers.
entire family.
One in Glen Rock and one in West Milford.
Oh, Daniele?
No, they're different names.
Okay.
Basically, the name that came here from Italy is Casparo.
Okay.
That's the name. So you have Casparo, you have Daniele, you have Muccio, you have Delano. So it's like all those four names are all like, obviously family oriented from mother's side, father's side, grandparents' side, stuff like that.
Fascinating.
So
Do most policemen have this much in their history, their family, their ancestors?
it's funny that you say that too, because I ask a lot of police officers, like within the department or other departments, and I ask them, are you the first one? A lot of them, it's the first one in the family to be a police officer, and then some of them, it's like I said, it's a family tradition. We have a lot of police officers over here where their fathers were cops, their grandfathers, their brothers, their sisters, but it could go definitely two different ways,
Yeah.
But I mean, being a police officer is definitely a calling. You just don't wake up up one day and say, okay, I want to be a cop or I want to go in the military. It's definitely some sort of calling. Sometimes it might be a calling, might be a little bit later in life. But I mean, I always joke around, but I was like a cop for every Halloween. Like that's all I ever wanted to do was be a police officer. Police officer.
I never dressed up as a priest for Halloween. Oh well.
Do it every day. It's the same thing too. People ask me, "What are you going to be for Halloween?" I'm like, I dress up every day. So it really doesn't make a difference, But it's definitely, it's definitely a calling. There's no doubt about that. It's a rewarding job. Sometimes I do wish I did went in the military, but I think this was kind of my destiny as well too, because I was also talking at that time about to Jerry Gamble, the retired chief, about going into the Marine Corps even on the reserve level, but at the time, like I said, I was a full-time dispatcher, and I was like, you know what, I always wanted to go in the Marine Corps. My brother obviously went. I wanted to keep that family tradition, but I believe that I chose the right route.
What was your mother's reaction to everyone in the family?
She was always honestly, she's supported, of course, but always on edge all the time. I remember when my twin brother went in the Marine Corps, and I had to tell her that his ship got, diverted to Albania and what was going on over there. And honestly, she was a mess, to be honest with you, So, but she's a strong woman, I used to call her the drill instructor, So,
how many boys growing up?
There's a total of 4 of us.
Four
boys, no girls.
No girls. No. Did your father run the house?
Yeah, it was definitely tough. Actually, Mom ran the house more than anything.
Of course,
there's no doubt about that. She definitely ran the show. So, but I mean, it's so funny that talking about my uncle, who I was named after, was he was born on April 1st of 1920, and our mayor, Dominic Stampone of this borough, he actually...
Who's been interviewed on our program.
Yes, so we had, I was telling him today that, that I was going to be interviewed by you, and he said, we really enjoyed the program and speaking about everything. And I was telling the mayor that my uncle, who was named after, was born on April 1st, 1920, and the mayor appointed me as officer in charge on April 1st of 2015.
Wow.
So how ironic is that,
how
we have such a connection? It's so funny because I have one aunt who's 92 years old who lives in Hawthorne. Was
she at the installation?
She was actually at the ceremony.
Yes.
She is the sister of my uncle who was killed, and she's basically, I call her the last of the Mohegans. She is the last of the first generation of my family that came here from Italy. So she also has, pictures of my uncle, the last letter that he ever wrote before he was killed in action. She also has his flag that was actually on his coffin.
Yes.
And she told me that if anything ever happened to her, she would obviously pass it on to me.
Great.
She has his, Purple Heart medals and stuff like that. So.
And speaking of medals, two questions. I'm going to ask you about this in a second. But talk about some of these badges.
So in December 1st of 1996, I started my law enforcement career here. I came up here as, at that time, it was auxiliary police, which now they're basically Class 1 officers. It's kind of the same exact job title, just or duties, just a different type of job title. In 1996, I started there as far as a dispatcher full-time and an auxiliary police officer, which is basically, like an observe and report. You're like it's like a police explorer type program, which we basically have now. You can enforce certain things as far as, parking summonses, borough ordinances, we do quality of life issues or, different types of events like parades and provide security for certain details. They don't carry weapons, auxiliaries or Class 1s, but it's a great entry-level program for law enforcement. That's exactly where I started out. Shortly after that, I was, promoted to Class 2, which is basically a part-time police officer, which you go to an academy for 6 to 7 months. You do carry a weapon. You're held to a higher standard. You're basically a police officer, but on a part-time basis. Right. I advanced my career with, as far as that. 2001 of June, I was hired as a full-time police officer here in the borough of Hilden, and then I was promoted to sergeant in 2012. lieutenant in 2014, and 2015 I was made deputy chief and officer in charge.
Wow.
So I have 20 years completed, actually of this year, December 1st of
That's
2016.
great. And tell me about this.
As far as the band, the Thin Blue Line, which is basically a camaraderie of symbol of police officers united. As you can see, a lot of towns, what they're doing is they're painting a thin
Yes.
blue line.
Yes.
We did that here in front of our department here. I was actually contacted by the mayor and the police chairman, who actually initiated, Michael Johnson, Councilman Johnson, who's also Elmwood Park police officer, and him and the mayor and the council president and the rest of the council, discussed about, painting the thin blue line to show, support to our
Solidarity,
police.
yeah, yeah.
So we did that, and the newspaper was here, and I don't know if you guys saw the article and stuff like that. We did some nice photo ops, and we painted the thin blue line from Haledon and Belmont down to the entrance of our police department. So,
great.
which was very nice of the mayor and
Yeah.
the police.
We're going
chiefs.
to pause there,
Of course.
because you have so much information I want to pick up again. The history of your family and your own activities as a policeman. Fascinating. This has been Father Louis with Show 1 with Deputy Chief Angelo. I got to say it the American way, Danielle, but I say it Daniele because it has the E in the end. Deputy Chief Angelo Daniele. And we're going to be back with part 2 here in Haledon, New Jersey, as we continue the history and the areas of interest that a policeman gets involved with. Thank you very much for
Thank you,
having us.
Father.
I appreciate it.
Thank
This
you,
is
Father.
wonderful.
Thank you.
We'll be back, and let me hear from you, Father FRLOUSCURTI@hotmail.com, and we'll put Borough of Haledon's information up as well. Bye-bye.